Hi, welcome to my journey. Today, we're leaving to get out for our hour, you know, mingling with society, right? Because I have my thoughts, right? The dogs are starting to realize, they're not in charge. Okay, they're starting to realize they haven't quite got it through their heads yet, but they're starting to realize. Hold on. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is while I'm drinking my protein shake, I'm going to be discussing some things that I've been thinking about, right? I've been thinking about this and kind of, wondering if, there are people out there that see things kind of the same way that I'm seeing it. Okay? Such as how we see Russia, right? The way that we see Russia is kind of like the way that we're starting to see America, right? When you get so big, right, and you start to believe that you're the absolute power, okay? What the hell? Yeah, you start to believe that you're the absolute power and that, everybody must bend to your will in order to stay in the union. Okay? Well, if people don't want to bend to your will, and then you think intimidation is going to work, and then you realize intimidation didn't work because why you didn't intimidate them. You actually had to assault them. You actually had to harm them. You actually had to unalive them. Your intimidation tactics didn't work. What that means that even if they surrender, they will not be cooperative 100%. Which means what? It kind of brings to mind that saying where you got to keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. Right? Because now you got to see if your enemies are going to influence your friends. Okay? So, we've been going through a lot of problems here in the United States. Okay? And we have people who, have disagreed with corporate America, right? The corporation of America is very greedy, right? And they are also in bed holding hands with the government of the United States of America. And we've been telling the United States of America, to stop this mess. And the United States of America, they get into office saying that, they're going to be fair, they're going to just, they're going to share the wealth, and we're all going to be powerful, and we're all going to be great. Okay? Then they get into office and they all get tempted. Because every corporation out there will say, everybody has a price. You just got to find out what their price is. And then they too will resort to intimidation tactics. Right? to kidnapping tactics, to bribery tactics, okay? And we've seen this, with our government, right? Where, they're like, we're gonna shut down the government, right? And we're gonna, whoever dies, and it's your fault. And both of them are pointing fingers, talking about, no, it's not the government's fault, it's corporate America's fault. Corporate America is like, no, it's not corporate America's fault, it's the government's fault, okay? And this is why it doesn't matter what party gets into office, because capitalism, which is ruling our finances, they're the ones there saying that they're the ones in charge, right? So, when the shit hits the fan, they say, well, look, you can either, be in the money or you can be out of the money. And once you're out of the money, Americans don't have no respect for you. And that's how Americans are pretty much. They don't listen to people who don't have no money. And even if they was to try to listen to somebody that has some money, they too will become targets of being ostracized from the wealth. And that's not what they want. Who wants that? And we keep saying, well, you can't give them that kind of power. And they don't understand. Well, if you give them that kind of power, and then you start realizing that they have power over you, you gave them that kind of power, right? The same way they tell women, men only treat you the way that you let them treat you, right? And yet, we have a lot of women that get unalived every minute of every day somewhere on the planet, okay? And these men, they don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's like, well, it was a mistake, right? It was a mistake. But I don't deserve to have to go to jail for life. I don't deserve to be put in, under judgment, where, I have to give a life because I took a life. I just made a mistake. That's what men do. But they don't have that same kind of thinking when it comes to women, right? Women can't go up there and say, well, that's just what people do. Sometimes we take a life, Yeah, I didn't have the money. I didn't have, the means to take care of my child. So, yeah, I just left her at the fire station, right? But instead, they want to track her down, and imprison her, to try to make her feel like she's obligated. That she's solely obligated for the protection of the children that get brought into this world. And yet, how are we solely obligated for the protection of the children that get brought into this world and then be denied the opportunity to make money? Then be denied, freedom, to tell somebody, no, I don't like you, I don't want you, and you can't have me, without retaliation from a man who's saying, well, I just felt rejected, so I killed her. Right? So we're seeing this happen on a global scale where, we're seeing that, less dominant countries are considered, feminine countries, and aggressive countries are considered masculine countries. Okay? So keep that in mind when I'm talking about how there are certain provinces that want to separate, right? Meaning they want a divorce. They want a divorce from their tyrannical, oppressor, who claims that the partnership is a beautiful one, but it's only one person saying it's beautiful. Okay? It's only unilateral, right? Unilateral contracts don't exist in reality. They don't. It's not a contract. It's just point blank oppression. A contract needs to be bilateral. They need to have free will and all of the information in order to agree to their contract, and then consent either through a signature or through monetary exchange. This is why I don't understand how come these men think that they have the right to dominate every woman, even if it's not their spouse. They don't have a contract with these women. Even in dating, you don't have a contract with these women. If you have a contract with these women, let us know what that contract is, because we don't see it. Your partner is saying that they never seen a contract. Not even a verbal contract was given. And yet, here you are, assaulting them, brutalizing them, taking advantage of their energy, their body, their possessions. This has got to stop. Hold on. And even though women have shown that they don't want this kind of this unilateral contract, it's making them ill, it's giving them diseases, it's causing them, pain, and it goes against their spiritual purpose on this planet, right? So then men try to say that women don't have spiritual purpose on this planet, and that's something I'm going to put on I've already put it on a petition. I just got to send it up there to the spiritual Supreme Court, that whoever says that women do not have spiritual purpose and mission on this planet, that they have to face judgment if it gets put on their spiritual resume, and they will have to go to court and justify why they think that they can take the inalienable rights of a human being and say that they don't have any, they don't have none. Right? And men do this all the time to women, and then when it's done to them, that's the only time they ever can even recognize that it happened. Right? But the behavior is acceptable towards women, and even if they thought that was okay, right? Which is not, because they come from a woman. There's no way that the tree would ever be greater than the roots of that tree. There's just no way. It doesn't make any common sense, right? And so this is what we're facing. We're facing men who have lost all common sense, or who deny common sense, being obtuse, right? Just so that they can get away with bullshit, right? And let me tell you something, getting away with bullshit is so temporary, but so damaging. Very damaging, right? So I'm looking and I'm like, oh my gosh, They got all of this information of all of these actors where, it's been reported that these men have been having sex with other men's, hundreds of men. Not like they love this young guy or beautiful guy. No, hundreds of men. Right? And these are the same men because they love to have, sex with men. They have no right even being in the proximity of a woman. And yet, they pretend like they are a great family man. They have pretended to the whole world that they're a great family man with a beautiful wife. Yes. And of course, most of y'all, unless you're true high priestesses, you don't see this, you don't feel this going on in the spiritual realm. But it is going on in the spiritual realm where these guys are facing judgment. Right? And these guys are like, well, we're men, we should be able to, stick and move. And they have nothing to justify that, especially when, first of all, it takes a woman 9 months to conceive a human being. Okay? This woman could die in the process of giving birth. Okay? Then it takes at least nine years for a child to start becoming like an adolescent, right? That means they need like mammalian care up until that age. That's a lot of resources. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of concerns and of safety and you name it. It is not easy. It takes a lot of resources. And if the guy isn't pulling his share of taking care of this child, right? And it's usually he's 100% should have most of the share, because why? Because she don't even love him. He don't even love her. He just went after her because he was sexually aroused. And furthermore, not only did he pluck the flower, but he wanted to make sure that everybody knew he plucked the flower. He didn't pluck the flower and was discreet and nobody knew. If nobody knows that the flower been plucked, then how the hell does anybody know? I mean, yeah, there's going to be the high priestesses and the priests that know. But that's the viciousness that has escalated, right? The viciousness that has escalated is these men want people to know that they are taking advantage of somebody sexually, right? Some of them even want to pretend like they did vile things to them, right? Even if they're not well endowed. Right? I did vile things to them, and people are starting to wonder, wow, are you endowed? No, you're not endowed. So we're like, oh my gosh. We're afraid to even ask. We're afraid to even ask, what vile things you did to that person when you're not even endowed. And even the ones that are endowed, that doesn't mean it operates the way that they want it to operate. Right? They got ED. Right? They got premature ejaculations. Right? And some of them, they're not fit. They're just not fit. They can't do a plank for 15, 20 minutes, 4 hours. No. They're like, you get on top. I'll just work at keeping it hard. Or buy some Viagra. Yeah. So, so they try to make it work some kind of way, But back in the day, they didn't do that. That's why they had those shotgun weddings, right? Oh, you gonna take advantage of my child? Do you know how much it cost me? And you ain't gonna marry her? Oh, yes, you gonna marry her. Shotgun and everything. Right? But, it got to be pretty dang dangerous, forcing a man to marry a woman that he didn't want to marry. So to me, that is clear evidence and proof that if these men cannot fulfill their position of being a co-creator and raising their products, their proteges, that they should be just taken off of the planet. There's no reason for them to be here. They're just not. Right? And that even goes for the ones that will sit up there and start to think, well, no, I was just loving her because, she's in, she was discarded or doesn't have a man and she's a single parent and I was trying to help them. If she says that you're not helping them, you either got to go or be eliminated, period. But these men want to sit up here and make a whole society of hoes. Women that they bastardized, right? Just so they could have, another option. Right? And God knows, it's horrible what they do to the young guys, the young boys. It's horrible that they would do that to them. And nobody wants to really turn their backs. Nobody really wants to turn their backs on these boys who have been molested by these vile men. But at the same time, here we are today, have a whole class of men that have been violated that have now become a protected class of people. Right? They're protected to get a job. They're protected to get funds. They're protected to have health insurance. And yet, the protection hasn't stopped them from changing up their lifestyle. It's like now that you have complete protection, you know, pick a gender. Some of them, they don't even want to pick a gender. They don't. I was looking at one video where this guy was claiming that he considers himself a he and they. That's how he identifies himself. I'm like, he and they? Right? They is plural. Excuse me? Right? How do you identify yourself in the plural? He and they. Now, when it comes to them, they would feel like, oh, it would be just, unfair, horrific to eliminate these people when they have they're victims, right? But because of their lifestyle, right, they're constantly recruiting other people into their lifestyle, right? They're constantly making it seem like, well, it's acceptable that, you become, a concubine to a man, and even if, you get AIDS or HIV, you're at least going to be able to have access to medical. Thank you, Obama, right? And so here we go, where we're seeing that they're still not trying to change their lifestyle, even though they're allowed to marry, even though they're allowed to exist in our society. They don't want to. It's too boring. They want an exciting, hedonistic lifestyle. And they want everybody to admire them. Right? Meaning that they kind of have that histrionic disease that look at me, look at me, look at me, right? And they have become so influential in our society that they have created a whole currency of attention-seeking society where they can get paid, right? Right? I mean, if you watch some of them, they're like, well, I can walk down the runway and demand attention. Like, what? What? So you want money because you can gyrate down the runway and get attention. Okay. And they do. They get people that, applauding them. Yes. You got the most magnificent walk of them all. So anyway, this is why we have so many people that now want to separate themselves from America. Because it's like, no. There are some Americans out there, they believe in, one love, right? one family, okay, till death, you know, they'll die for that. They'll die for that. Not this, you know, throwaway lifestyle that's being imposed upon them as a result of people who want to pursue the hedonistic, controlling, tyrannical type of lifestyle. Because, you know, I mean, think about it. To be a heathenist is bad. Okay? It's so bad that you are so caught up in your feelings that, you know, you could really just look like you're having a whole hell of a lot of fun. Right? And you would say, what is wrong with me just having a whole lot of fun? Well, you having a whole lot of fun by yourself is great. Right? Kind of like what's going on between like me and Snoopy and you know, our water sign doggy that we have, you know, adopted. Right? The water sign doggy gets in the middle of every interaction between me and Snoopy. Every interaction. She gets in the middle of every feeding. She gets in the middle of even interactions that we don't even commit. She's making interactions beyond the scope of what we even want to get involved in. And we're looking at her like, what are you doing? Right? And she looks back like, she just having fun. Right? And so it gives me an understanding of how, you know, a lot of times, you know, just because, you know, something makes you feel good, you have to, you know, step back and see how other people truly feel. Right? Because a lot of people, they don't want you to see them sweat. They don't want you to see that you've affected them. Right? So they're just like, yeah, whatever. Okay? But then they want to be separated from that person. They're like, you know, and that person who is the heathenist, right? They're like, well, how come, you know, we're just having fun. But they didn't see that they were the only one having fun, right? They were so busy trying to project the fact that they're having all of this fun that they can't even conceive in their mind that the other people around them are not having fun. Right? So while Gracie is sitting up here, you know, having fun with playing with Snoopy's leash, she doesn't even know that her having fun with her leash is causing her choke collar to choke her. So this ain't fun for Snoopy, but it's a whole hell of a lot of fun for Gracie.
Tired of waking.
Okay, so we understand that. Me and, you know, Snoopy, we understand that because we're like, oh, okay, you know, when you're young, you really have tunnel vision. You do. You only see, what you see, and that's it, right? But as you get older, you know, it's expected that you pull out, that you pull out and start seeing a wider focus and range, you know, to the point where eventually you can have a 360 perspective. A 360 perspective, right? Even if that 360 perspective involves past, present, and future. Right? So when we sit up here and we start to tell these women, oh, you know, you should have chose better. And these women were like, they didn't have a chance to choose. Right? That was the whole purpose of a courtship. The courtship was to give each party a fair opportunity to really get to know each other, to see how, you know, they fit in to the family, right? Because it's so hard. It is really hard, you know, to be a couple trying to raise a family without support of your family. It is very hard. And yet we have not instilled that into our children, especially our women, enough. Because, you know, when women are in love and these men are telling them, you know, love will find a way, you know, they want to believe in the romance and they don't want to give up on love. And that's how they will feel. They will feel like if they give up, well, this is how the men will make them feel. The men will make them feel like, well, if you don't take me right now and, you know, take this chance, you're not going to get another chance. Which definitely should have been the red flag that the woman should have identified right away. Okay? Because if something is only going to be an opportunity in the moment, you know, you don't know, you know, what repercussions are going to follow that moment. Because, you know, it's spontaneous and impulsive. And spontaneous and impulsive actions are very, very, very short-sighted. Right? So this is why, you know, we have so many people, you know, who are jumping into these relationships. They don't know the family. You know, back in our day, you know, these women thought that, you know, because the man would take them to their family's house, introduce them to their family, that means that they were in. And men did this on purpose. They were like, yeah, let me introduce you to my family, right? And so, you know, both me and my mom, we were upset at my brother because he was bringing through all of these women, right? And me and my mom, we had this discussion. I'm like, well, Francois keeps bringing in all of these women, you know, expecting us to accept these women. And then when he cuts them off, we're also supposed to cut them off. Right? We can't maintain the relationship that was established because he's finished with them. You know, and I'm asking my mom, why did she allow this, right? And I don't know if my mom had told him something in private, because it just seemed like after that my brother had stopped, bringing women to the house. Okay? It seemed like he just sort of stopped bringing women to the house. Because there are situations where sometimes you don't even want to accept the person. You don't like them. There's, a clash of energies between these women. Not everybody, gets along with everybody. And sometimes we don't even know why, people don't get along instantly. We don't know. So I'm down here by the lake. Of course I rode around the lake. I like riding around the lake. And since I've been riding around the lake, the temperature has went up to 76 degrees. And I had to turn on my air conditioning. And I think I could, take off this jacket. But I'm going to tell you, even Snoopy, right? She will get caught up in her feelings of friendship and enthusiasm, and instead of her, remaining in her senior position, right? She will fall back at times and actually follow the puppy, right? And I'll look at her like, what's wrong with you? Why would you follow a puppy? Why would you follow a short-sighted, inexperienced, tunnel vision, youth at your age? And I guess, the response that I got was, that youth gave her some energy. So that's why she followed him. That's why she followed her. And I understand that. I do. When we're, in the process of exchanging energies and stuff, it feels so comfortable and good sometimes, but then at times when it doesn't, I guess it's just hard to pull back. It is really hard to pull back. Okay, so I think I'm gonna leave this video here.